We begin Masechet Nazir today, called Kinuye Naziris Kinaziris. So we have the halacha of Kinuyim. We'll have Machlokes Pshin Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish about what Kinuyim is exactly, but whatever it is, it's an Ikar Lashon HaNeder, and therefore it's as if he had said Hareini Nazir. And now the Mishnah goes on to discuss something called Yodayim or Yodos, which means Omer Ehei. He didn't specify that he'll be a Nazir, but we seem to understand contextually through circumstantial evidence that he means to be Makabal on himself Nazirus, and therefore raise a Nazir. Oh, Ehei Noah. The Gemara is going to discuss what does it mean, I will be beautiful, and he's a Nazir. So these are incomplete Lashonos, and the Mishnah is Machadish that not only are Kinuyim valid for Nazirus, but even Yodayim are also. The Mishnah now goes on to discuss Kinuyim. Later on, we'll have a discussion about Yodayim. And the Kinuyim here are Nazik, Naziach, Haziach. These are all Kinuyim, substitutes for the word Nazir. And if he accepted himself, upon himself, Nazirus with any of those Lashonos, Harei Ze Nazir. An additional group of Lashonos that are valid for Kabbalas Nazirus, Hareini Kazel, be like him, and there's a Nazir passing in front of him. Hareini Misalsel, I accept upon myself to grow my hair long, and my hair will become Sa'arei Nazir. And he's holding on to his hair when he says this declaration. Hareini Mechalkel, and that also means to grow your hair for the purpose of Nazirus. He's holding on to his hair when he declares this. Or Harei Olai L'Shaleach Era, which means to grow my hair. So in all these cases, these are incomplete Lashonos, but we understand that what he has in mind and in his heart is to accept upon himself Nazirus, or he's a Nazir, and these are Yodayim. If he declares Harei Olai Tziporim, this is a machlokus. Tziporim are what's called Shtei Torim or Shnei Bnei Yonah, and that's a korban of a Nazir Tameh. And he made this declaration, and a Nazir was over Lefanim. So once again, by virtue of the fact that he seems to be accepting upon himself the korbanos of a Nazir, that would indicate that he wants to accept upon himself Nazirus. And therefore, Rabbi Meir Omer Nazir, it's valid. Chachamim Omer, however, Eino Nazir. Why? Because here the Nazir Tar does not bring birds, and therefore, if he wants to be makabel on himself Nazirus, he must focus on the korbanos of the Nazir Tar. The Gemara asks the following: Lichti Hana b'Seder Noshim. We're in Seder Noshim of the 6th Dorim. And the subject matter of Seder Noshim are the dinim of Ishus. My Taimatani Nazir. Nazir doesn't seem to belong at all to Seder Noshim. It's about Nazirus, not about Ishus. And perhaps more likely, the appropriate Seder for Nazir would have been Kodshim, because there are korbanos that a Nazir has to bring. At the end of his Nazirus, he brings a keves li'ola, a kibsol chatas, and ayil shlamim. All this is explicit in the Torah in Parshas Naso. And in Nitma, if in the middle of his Nazirus he contracts Tuma, then after he purifies himself, then he brings Shtei Torah Mishnei Bnei Yonah, one for Nola, one for Chatas, plus he brings a keves li'osha. So this seems to be, and will be, a major chunk of this Masechet, the laws of Kodshim, of Karbonos. So what's it doing in Seder Noshim? And the Gemara answers, Tana Krokoi, the pasuk is going to indicate a connection between Nazirus and Ishus, in this case, Hafkas Ishus. And how so? The Torah tells us in Parshas Ki Teitze Ba'erev in Losim Tzachein Be'erev Ki Motza Ba'erev V'Sdover. And the Torah goes on to formulate the laws of a get, a sefer krisus that he has to deliver to his wife. And the Gemara says, what exactly is the background here for Lotim Tzachein Be'erev, and the reason he's giving a get to his wife? And the answer is that she did some sort of a Meiser's Nus. And Hachikam, now Atan is giving us a moral lesson. Mi garam lo latveira. In many cases, what brings about a woman to have such an illicit relationship, out of marriage relationship? Yain. She was under the influence of yain. Now, I'm not exactly sure whether the focus here is on yain or on the intoxicating alcoholic element, but the Torah in the Parsha of Nazir focuses exclusively on yain. Uka Omar. Now there's a statement of Rebbe, and Rebbe wants to know Lama Nisbacha Parshas Nazir la Parshas Sota. Shekol Aroa Sota beKilkula. Kilkula here means nivel, in a boshes, in a humiliating situation, where all the things that they do to a Sota is, if he sees that, it should make an impact on him. And Yaser Atzum and Yain. He should accept upon himself Nazirus, and that's going to protect him from that state of Kalas Rosh, which is going to lead Chas Shalom to an Avera, and therefore the Nazirus is on a higher level. The impression you get from Rebbe is that Nazirus and Kabbalas Nazirus is a positive thing. We'll see later on, Hanoim will hold the opposite, that the Torah is not in favor of Kabbalas Nazirus, and there's a certain element of faith in accepting Nazirus. Now, it's interesting that you would have perhaps anticipated that if a person is Roa Sota B'Kilkula and he wants to avoid Yayin, then he should be careful about drinking wine. That doesn't necessarily mean there's a large gap here that you have to traverse in order to reach Nazirus with all its many aspects and Isurim and so forth and so on. So in that sense, you're not sure exactly how Rebbe answers the question of why the Parsha of Nazir is an appropriate smichus to the Parsha of Sota. Maybe Shmira Min HaYayin would be enough. I don't know if he has to go as far as to recover himself Nazirus. And then again, we're back to square one. Why was Masechet Nazir incorporated into Seder Noshim? However, I guess we're saying the following, that what we derive from this smichus of Parshas is that Yayin is Gorem Avera, and a person to save himself, protect himself from Avera, he should avoid Yayin. In any event, the Gemara goes on to say the following, and this is the main question for today's limud. Pasach b'kinuyim v'mefarish yados. The opening line of the Mishnah, kinui, kol kinui nazirus kinazirus, and there's no discussion about kinuyim in the Mishnah. Immediately, the Mishnah jumps into yodayim, to yados, refers yados. For example, he said, aha, Amar Rafa, ve'itema kidi, kidi is the name of a chacham, chisui mechsavach, you have to add a few words to the Mishnah, called kinuyim nazirus kinazirus, the Yados Nazirus Kinazirus. So those words, Yados Nazirus Kinazirus, have to be added to that Mishnah. And then Ve'eluhem Yados. Now that we've established that Yados of Nazirus generate a Kabbalas Nazirus, then what are these Yados? Give us examples. The Omer, hey, I raise a Nazir. And a hey is an incomplete language. It's a Yad. So the Gemara asks for the following. The Lifrosh Kinuye Barisha. Now, if you opened up with Kinuyim, and the Mishnah states called Kinuyim Nazirus Kinazirus, then go ahead and tell me what Kinuyim are. and then go ahead and establish that Yodos Nazirus Kinazirus and tell me what you're dying on. There should be a logical structure and a flow. And we're going to learn about Kinuyim later on, but it should be here up front when we establish that called Kinuyim Nazirus Kinazirus. And the Gemara answers, Kana me'ahudis solik ahudim mefarish v'rish. We have a system, a format of A, B, B, A. So that which was mentioned second is going to be explained first. And we find precedence in Masechet Shabbos Kedisnan, which oils and wicks should be used for Ner Shabbos, or which should be avoided because there ain't no dolkin yofa, which might be not only a hafkas mitzvah and a psul, it might even be an iser because shema yates aner. And then the Mishnah continues and says, Ein manlikim b'reisha. First, it gives you a list of which oils and wicks should be excluded. We find it also in Masechet Shabbos, Bameh Tomnin Uvameh Ein Tomnin. Right, there's an Isra Atmana on Erev Shabbos, and that's because it's Mosif Eish. And there are those Hatmanos which are Shomer Ala Eish, and that might be permissible. And there's Hatmana where it adds to the fire, and that's a little bit Domel with Bishul, and the Rabbanim made Xera. And then it goes on to say, but Me'ain Tomnin. He tells you that anything that's Mosif Chom, and he gives you examples, are included in Bameh Ein Tomnim, are excluded from Hatmana. They're prohibited. Mefarish Ein Tomnim V'Reisha. He gives you first the list of those kinds of Hatmanas that are prohibited. So he goes A, B, B, A. Another Mishnah in Shabbos, Bameh Yisha Yotza, Bameh Ein Yotza. What kind of jewelry is a woman allowed to wear in Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos? And which pieces of jewelry are prohibited? Umefarish, and the Tan explains, Shalopetze Isha, and gives you the list of what she's prohibited from wearing in Rosh Hashanah Bereisha first. So the Gemara says, is it really true that this is an absolute format of the Mishnayos? But Tanan, we have a Mishnah in Shabbos, but Bameh Behema Yotza, Ubameh Ein Yotza. Knows what is a behemoth allowed to have on its body, and it's not a masa. Umefarish Yotze Gamal Bereisha, etc. It goes through those situations which are mutter. So it's A, B, A, B. Or, for example, towards the end of the Masechet Bava Basra, the parak begins with Yesh Nochlin Uman Filin, and then it goes on to tell you Yesh Nochlin V'Lo Filin, and then it goes back to the original statement of Yesh Nochlin Uman Filin, Bereisha. So it goes A, B, A, B. And these are the laws of Yerusha. When a relative dies, the relative that bequeaths his mammon after his death is sometimes it's a relationship between the nochel, the manfil, in both directions, nochel and zeh. And then there are those that are nochel, they will inherit v'lo manfilin, but in their death, they will not bequeath their property to that person. Yesh manfilin v'lo nochlin, and the flip is true. There are manfilin that are not nochel, and there are nochlin v'lo manfilin. Umefarish elu nochlin manfilin v'reisha. He goes back to the original statement of nochlin manfilin. Elyon, therefore, we have to come to the conclusion, Tani Hachi, Vitani Hachi. There is no definite pattern. And in every case, in every situation, there's going to be some sort of reasoning why he goes in that particular order. There's no universal rule of the literature of the Mishnayos with regard to A, B, B, A, or A, B, A, B, Ela Hossam, with regard to Hadlokas Neres B'Shabbos, Ratmono Yitzias Isha, Isura, the Isur de Nafshehu. This is precipitated by the action of a person, and that makes it more chamur. Is Mefarish Isur de Nafshe Bereshi goes back to the last one to explain the last one. In other words, which situation, which scenarios are also. However, in the case of Behema, Behema Yotza, that's already a more lenient kind of Isur because Isura ID Behema Hudiasi. He doesn't do anything actively. He's Mitzuval Shvisas Behemto, but it's the action of the Behema that is prohibited, and therefore it's more Kal and Mefarish HaTeira Barish. He goes back to the side HaHeter, and that's going to be a pattern of A, B, A, B. So again, an Isa that's Chal al Maisa Ha'odam Atzmo is Chomer B'Ein of Yosem, Isa Shechal Machmas Maisa Behemto.